Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to VENKANNA English Guru. Friends, let us start our discussion. Friends, we are actually talking about history of English literature. As a part of history of English literature, where we are actually talking about neoclassical period. So where we have uh, completed the discussions with regard to neoclassicism, and now today uh, we are going to talk about two important writers. One is Oliver Goldsmith, and the other one is William Blake. Friends, and based on this, based on with regard to this neoclassicism, where we have actually started the concepts of English literature and the discussion with regard to history of English literature, and where we discussed more than 15 classes, I think so, on Old English, Middle English, Renaissance, and Neoclassicism. And I feel like, and once we talk about these two writers, and we will stop the discussion with regard to Neoclassicism. And first, let us have a kind of introductions to all literatures. Okay, today we will talk about this, and in the next class, and we will start our important period, Romanticism. And based on Romanticism and Victorianism, I think I may talk about today's fourth, and maybe I may talk about uh, Romanticism and Victorianism and the whole month, I think so. Okay, because since the two periods are so important for us, so where we have to talk about a number of writers, I may take more than 20 plus classes on the two important periods. So before we talk about the Romanticism, and let us complete and have some basic knowledge of two writers. One is Oliver Goldsmith, second one is William Blake. If my voice is clear, show me thumbs up so that I can continue my session. So friends, Oliver Goldsmith, the moment you think about, come on, show me thumbs up if my voice is clear. If my voice is clear, and show me thumbs up, my friends. Yes, yes, quick. And if my voice is clear, show me thumbs up. Yeah, thank you. So friends, the moment you think about Oliver Goldsmith with regard to English literature in the previously as a part of NTA or UGC-NET examination, there were plenty of bits based on Oliver Goldsmith. Who of the following neoclassical writer is an Irish writer? Jonathan Swift and Oliver Goldsmith. Remember this. Who spoke about the importance of anti-sentimentalism in English literature first, and it was Oliver Goldsmith, that we need to get some idea, and who made a lot of comments on Richard Steele, and that was Oliver Goldsmith, who is so popular for there is a popular drama called She Stoops to Conquer. This is actually called comedy or farce. They popularized by again and Oliver Goldsmith and Mr. Hardcastle, Mrs. Hardcastle. These are the popular characters created by Oliver Goldsmith. Like there were plenty of uh, uh, bits which were given based on Oliver Goldsmith, and he was a poet, novelist, essayist, and dramatist. See, my friends, Oliver Goldsmith. So, and 1728 and 1774, the death of next you see, he was Anglo-Irish novelist. This is what I was actually talking about. Irish writer, Irish poet, Irish essayist, and novelist, playwright, and poet. He is best known for his novel, The Vicar of Wakefield, wonderful novel that is composed in 1766. The Vicar of Wakefield, very, very important novel, my friends. And his pastoral poem, The Deserted Village. Pastoral poem is nothing but elegy, and his place. And he also, this novel, which includes an elegy written in the country church, not an elegy written on the death of a mad cat. Remember, an elegy written on the death of a mad cat. This becomes a part of the dash following novel. So that is Vicar of Wakefield, published in 1766. And The Good-Natured Man, a popular novel, and play. She Stoops to Conquer, very popular play that is composed by Oliver Goldsmith. Several times this bit was asked, what is the subtitle of She Stoops to Conquer? Mystics of a Night. Very, very important. Several times this bit appeared in the history of NET and performed in 1773. He is thought to have written the classic children's The History of Little Goody Two Shoes, and children classical and work that is composed by Oliver Goldsmith. So remember, Irish writer and popular for Vicar of Wakefield, Good-Natured Man, She Stoops to Conquer, and the other things. Next you can see, and he was an Irish writer known for his anti-sentimental comedy. Friends, I think I told you, as a part of my discussions with regard to Unit 2, Introduction to Unit 2 Drama, where I spoke about comedy, types of comedy like comedy of humors, or romantic comedy, sentimental comedy, anti-sentimental comedy, or comedy of manners, or restoration comedy, like where I spoke about. I think I also gave you some examples on that. If you have not listened to that, you go back and watch comedy types. So anti-sentimental comedy, because during this is actually different concepts that was introduced into English literature by Oliver Goldsmith first, which is against to sentimentalism during age of Augustus, and there were popular writers called Richard Steele. Richard Steele, who invented the concept of sentimental comedy, where the purpose of comedy is to expose the sentiments of family, sentiments of relationships, sentiments of a society, sentiments of siblings, sentiments. But whereas Oliver Goldsmith composed a number of plays in order to make comment on those sentiments and sentiments, nature of human being, nature of the society, nature of culture. That is what anti-sentimental comedy. And the best example is She Stoops to Conquer, and the best example is The Good-Natured Man. Best, these two are popular examples for anti-sentimental comedy, and which are also examples for a kind of farce kind of comedy that you can find. Next you can see, and The Vicar of Wakefield, when we talk about what is this novel, what is this novel about? The Vicar of Wakefield, and it has a subtitle, a tale, short subtitle, a tale supposed to be written by himself. So this is the subtitle, a tale supposed to be written by himself. It's a novel by Irish writer Oliver Goldsmith and published in 1766. Very, very important. It was one of the most popular, widely read 18th century novel during the Victorian period. So as I told you in my discussions with regard to Renaissance, Elizabethan age is considered to be the Magna Carta of English drama. In the same way, and neoclassical period is considered to be the rise of novel, how novel became popular, and how novel became one of the genres of middle class people. And it created a base for next periods. So as a result, the Victorian period, according to the historians, Victorian period from 1832 to 1901, this is considered to be the greatest, the Magna Carta of English fiction, English novel. And there you could find plenty of writers like Charles Dickens, W. Thackeray, Antonio Trollope, Samuel Butler, and you will have plenty of novelists like Oscar Wilde, G.B. Shaw, like plenty of different novelists. First, they observed different novels that were composed during neoclassical period, and they understood the reasons for the spread of fiction, and during this period, and Vicar of Wakefield was widely read, and the Victorians understood the nitty-gritty of this important novel and the background of composing this novel, and so that they wrote a number of novels. So this became a source example for writing a number of novels during Victorian period. Remember this, and this is also one of the important novels that come under anti-sentimental comedy. Remember that. For example, see, if a snake bites someone, usually someone dies, but here the snake dies. That is called anti-sentimentalism. What is sentiments? What are sentiments? So that is why. Next, you can see She Stoops to Conquer. And short, information with regard to She Stoops to Conquer, and it's a comedy, and it's a comedy by Oliver Goldsmith. And this comedy, Antisentimental Comedy, farts comedy, where you can find a lot of belly laughter, hearty laughter. Next, and this is performed in London in 1773. And initially, the play was titled Mistakes of the Night. This is very important. What is the subtitle? What is the first title of She Stoops to Conquer? Mistakes of the Night. And the events within the play take place in one long night. That is why, and the writer, the dramatist, wanted the novel to be named Mistakes of the Night, but made She Stoops to Conquer. Next, in 1778, John O'Keefe wrote a loose sequel, Tony Lumpkin in Town. So this is the sequel of She Stoops to Conquer, published. And farts comedy that I told you. Farts. So a type of belly laughter, a type of comedy where you will have a lot of belly laughter. The moment you sit in that, the moment you read the dialogues or watch characters, you will have hearty laughter. Hence, it is called farts comedy, farts simply. And 5 acts, as I told you during my discussion during my introductions to drama, every play that is composed till the end of the neoclassical period, all the plays were composed only in 5 acts, not 3 or 4. Only the tradition of writing 3 or 4 only became popular from the beginning of Romantic period, and we will talk about little later. So, farce comedy and one sequel, and the subtitle Mistakes of the Night, 1773. She Stoops to Conquer. It's a popular play. Remember, my friends. Next, this is some basic information with regard to Oliver Goldsmith, my friends. Okay. Next, and when we talk about the other writer, William Blake, the moment with regard to William Blake, we'll talk something about uh, some more informative words during uh, Romantic period, because he becomes one of the major important figures, poets of Romantic period rather than Neoclassicism. And in Neoclassical period, in Age of Sensibility, William Blake is actually considered to be pre-romantic poet. Pre-romantic poet, which means, and the kind of principles, features that were followed by romantic poets were first practiced and first introduced into English literature introduced into literature poetry by a group of poets, as we discussed. These are actually considered to be transitional poets. As I told you, both today we are talking about two important writers, Oliver Goldsmith and William Blake. Both are considered to be pre-romantic poets, transitional poets. So, which means they spoke about passion, they spoke about feelings, they spoke about natural, they spoke about supernatural, they spoke about inner feelings. They wrote literature about themselves, apart from talking about the society mainly. And these transitional poets, mainly Oliver Goldsmith and William Blake, were the first important poets who opposed the principles of neoclassicism and the classical writers. Instead, they went on and they went on selecting subjects that are innovative, that are peculiar, that are crazy for them, that they felt, that they imagined, and that they had a lot of passion about to write. That is why these two, Oliver Goldsmith and William Blake, are considered to be pre-romantic writers. Friends, the moment you think about the word pre-romantic, it's a very loaded word, which means you need to compare. First, you need to know the basic principles of neoclassicism, how they were actually opposed by these two. That's what their poetry is all about. So if there may be a bit during neoclassical period, some of the poets neglected the principles. Who are they? So blindly transitional poets, blindly pre-romantic poets. And during neoclassical period, late neoclassical period, some of the popular poets wrote literature about nature, feelings, their own emotions, their own imagination. Who are they? So the answer is going to be two important figures, Oliver Goldsmith and William Blake. Very, very important, my friends. Okay, so William Blake, we are talking about 1757, 1827, and 28 November 28th November 1757, 1827, 1830, 1832, that is considered to be the end of Romanticism. So you could find a lot about Romanticism from 1790s to and 1820 and 1815, like that. And you can find the greatest literature that is actually composed by major writers. So he was also a part of the major important romantic period. So he was an English poet, a painter, and printmaker. So with regard to English literature, only poet. That is why the moment you think about William Blake, you should have two major important poetic techniques: poetic symbolism, poetic persona. Very, very important, my friends. We'll talk about in an elaborated manner when I talk when we discuss Romanticism. So poetic persona and poetic symbolism, very popular poetic techniques, and where and which were popularly employed by and William Blake. And second, and when we Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, two popular important works composed by William Blake. So you will have a lot of bits based on Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience, and you can see poetic symbolism, poetic persona, like. So only poet, no novelist, no dramatist, no essayist, and is now considered as a seminal figure in the history of poetry and visual art of Romantic age. So yes, prophetic persona, prophetic works, very, 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 very important. Prophetic works were said to be said by 20th century critic Northrop Frye, Northrop Frye, who actually figures the archetypal criticism, the study of archetypal criticism, where and in which Northrop Frye becomes one of the major important critics. And from archetypal criticism, okay, myth criticism, we can also say myth criticism, archetypal criticism. He was actually from Canada. Okay, Northrop Frye, and he is actually making comment on not just Northrop Frye, A. Richards, T.S. Eliot, many writers made a number of comments on William Blake. And Northrop Frye made one comment, you can see. His prophetic works were said by 20th century critic to form what is, in proportion to its merits, the least read body of poetry in the English language. So where he actually talks about, and his prophetic works and had a lot of influence according to Northrop Frye. Next, friends, produced a diverse and symbolically rich aura which embraced the imagination as the body of God. So according to, friends, when we talk about the concept of imagination, everybody talks about. P.B. Shelley spoke about imagination, S.T. Coleridge spoke about imagination, and many writers, many poets during Romantic period discuss the concept of imagination. We'll talk about their classifications. According to William Blake, what is imagination? So, according to William Blake, a diverse, symbolically rich aura which embraces the imagination as the body of God. So, what is imagination according to William Blake? It is the body of God. It is the human existence itself. So, imagination is nothing but, so for example, say our life is an illusion. So, the statement becomes and mystical. This type of statements, according to philosophy, you can say mysticism. What we've been talking about today, I'm talking to you about William Blake. Why we've been talking about all this, and is there any relevance to us? For menial things, we are wasting a lot of time. For example, so what is our life? What are we going to do? Nobody knows when we leave this world. Without notice, we come to this world. Without notice, we go out of this world. And for all in between, what we've been doing, and we've been learning all this, we are spending a lot of time, and we are doing a lot. So this process of understanding, which you can say according to Blake, mysticism. So for example, once you think about yourself, why am I doing and preparing all this? What is NET? What is UGC-NET? What is NTA? What is English literature? Why I have been talking about this? And what am I going to do? So if I qualify this, I am going to be a lecturer. So what? After becoming a lecturer, what are you going to do? And you will be a lecturer, you will be a professor. So what? So again, you go on having a number of questions. This purpose, this and the concept of having all these thoughts, according to Blake, which you can say imagination. The body of God, the human existence itself is nothing but imagination, according to Blake. Although Blake was considered mad by contemporaries for his idiosyncratic views, he is held in high regard by later critics for his expressiveness and creativity. Yes, idiosyncratic. So, my friends, see, and people who talk about philosophy, they are considered mad, usually in the world. Usually in our, see, and people, and Socrates or Plato or Aristotle, they were stoned to death. And because people were not able to understand the principles of the big three, Socrates, Aristotle, or Plato, and nobody was able to understand their thoughts, what they were actually talking about. And they were instigated by the kings and other rulers, and hence the common people threw a number of stones and they were stoned to death. Which means people who talk about philosophy, people who talk about truth, people who talk about the truths of God, and they are hated by the society. So William Blake also, his poetry, and where you can find a lot of symbolism. Poetic symbolism is one of the major important aspects of his poetry. So mystic poetry, mysticism, people who talk about mysticism, people who talk about existence, people who talk about philosophy are considered mad. So as Blake was considered, but later, and like, and Emily Dickinson poetry, nobody was able to understand the poetry composed by Emily Dickinson, and people considered her mad, kept kept in a dark room, and but after her death, and based on her sisters who brought all the poetry composed by Emily Dickinson, and people came to know about the greatness of Emily Dickinson. In the same way, not just Emily Dickinson, many writers. D.H. Lawrence was abused. E.M. Foster was imprisoned, and all the novels were burnt, and because they were not able to understand what he or she was talking about, what D.H. Lawrence was talking about, what E.M. Foster was talking about, and even the Britain Parliament and banned the novels composed by D.H. Lawrence because they were not in a position to understand, because that is what literature. What is literature? Literature, and you feel like you understood everything, but after some time you do not know what you have read. That is the greatness of literature. So most of the people, they did not understand the poetry composed by Blake, but later a number of critics, and you see, so expressive and creativity for the philosophical and mystical undercurrents within his work. So his poetry involves a lot of philosophy, a lot of mysticism, truths about God, truths about nature. I see. Next. And when you want to talk about philosophy, when you want to talk about myth and mysticism, first you must be uh, and you should have a lot of knowledge with regard to one or many religions. And he was a popular priest, and he had a lot of faith towards the concepts of Christianity, towards the God, towards the Almighty. That's what where he was able to talk about. People do not have any fear of death. So people like William Blake, people who talk about philosophy, people and who talk about and who talk a lot about religion, they do not have any fear towards God or death. His paintings and poetry have been characterized as part of a romantic movement, pre-romantic. That's what I've been talking about. His poetry is called pre-romantic, and he is called pre-romantic poet and romantic poet. A committed Christian who was hostile to the Church of England, where he had a lot of faith towards Almighty, towards God. He was influenced by the ideals, ambitions of the French and American revolutions. French Revolution, what happened in 1789, and American Revolution 1775 and 1781, what actually happened in American Revolution, and where he took a lot of inspiration to write, to compose poetry. So usually, greatest difficulty make you mystical in this world, remember. So you will have a lot of faith towards God, and that faith turns into mysticism when you are in a deep trouble. So and as he was greatly influenced by, because and he witnessed the problems of French Revolution, problems of American Revolution, and he was inspired all the romantic poets. Why they became so popular? Only because of revolution, French Revolution. So influenced by these two revolutions, and though later he rejected many of these political beliefs, and he maintained amiable relationship with the political activists Thomas Paine, and who wrote The Rights of Man, which talks about the importance of French Revolution. And he was also influenced by thinkers such as Emmanuel Swedenborg, other writers, and who talks about the importance of American Romanticism. And now I'm giving you some basic knowledge with regard to Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. Songs of Innocence. Songs of Innocence, published in 1789. In the same year, the French Revolution began, as I told you during my discussions with regard to dates. And this deals with naive hopes and fears that inform the lives of children and trace their transformation as the child grows into adulthood. So he talks about the process of innocence into maturity. Next, some of the poems are written from the perspective of children, while the other are about children as seen from adult perspective. So, how we actually look at children, how children look at adults. That's what and where you can understand. Many of the poems draw attention to the positive aspects of the natural human understanding prior to the corruption and distortion of experience. Some basic points about Next, others take a more critical stance towards innocent purity. Okay, where he actually talks about the innocence, purity of children that is actually exposed in the poems Songs of Innocence. And while Blake draws touching portraits of the emotional power of rudimentary Christian values, and he also exposes over the heads, as it were, of innocent Christianities and capacity for promoting injustice and cruelty. So, how they were and how they had injustice or cruelty towards them, and due to a number of problems. Next, when we see the poem became a trivial story, the stolen lock of, sorry, not this. Next, you can see another important concept, Songs of Innocence. And this is published in 1893. So first one, Songs of Innocence, 1789, second, 1893, and two, collaboration, 1894. Remember this. And this parallels and contrasts to lament the ways of which harsh experiences of adult life destroy what is good in innocence. So Songs of Experience, this is actually a comment on what adult life, how they destroy what is good in innocence, how this adult life destroys innocence in human beings, and also articulating the weaknesses of innocent perspective. And the Tiger, for example, if we read the Tiger, London, and Holy Thursday, plenty of poems that you talk about. And for example, the Tiger, and for attempts to account for real negative forces in the universe, which innocence fails to confront, because innocence always fails to oppose those ideas. That's what he talks about. These later poems treat sexual morality in terms of and repressive effects of jealousy and shame, secrecy of which corrupt the ingenious of innocent love. And with regard to the religion, they are less concerned with the character of individual faith. So with regard to religion, the character of the individual faith is not accounted, is not given any priority. And institution of the church, its role in politics, its effects on society and individual mind. Experience thus adds a layer to innocence that darkens its hopeful vision, and experience which hides the concepts of innocence, according to Blake. Okay, this is what I wanted to talk about in my lecture, my friends, and we'll start a new period, that is Romanticism, and where I think I may talk about it for more than 10 classes, I think so, because I want to talk about in a detailed aspects, because it's very important for many examinations. Okay, friends. Right then, we'll meet in the next class. Again, we'll start Romanticism. Thank you. Right then. And before you leave, like our video and comment our video. Share our videos to your friends and classmates. Yes.